Hello and welcome to another video. Today I want to talk to you about my recent trip to Disneyland and California Adventure. So if you don't know, which you probably don't know because I've never shared this, I am a big Disney fan and so is my entire family. I actually grew up in Los Angeles, and so some of my earliest memories have been my family taking us to Disneyland for every single birthday. I remember my sister and I would dress up in Pocahontas shirts or matching Disney outfits, and back in the days where they used to give autographs and take pictures with you, the characters. I just have so many pictures and memories of spending time at Disneyland. And we were very excited at the beginning of this year when we heard that the parks were going to be reopening again. Obviously through COVID, they were closed. My sister and my brother are both season pass holders or annual holders, and they paused their memberships, canceled their memberships, and so we didn't really know when the parks would be open again. But earlier this year it was announced that they would be open for reservations. I believe back in April or May is when we made the reservations. And so I just kind of want to share a little bit about my experience of being at the park during COVID. I took a bunch of footage, a bunch of video, and it was also exciting because the day that we got to go was also the very first day that the new Avengers Campus was open. And so it was June 4th of 2021. It was the grand opening. And so I have a lot of video clips of what the campus looks like for those people that haven't made it out yet. But I did want to share my experience and give you guys a few tips and tricks that I learned along the way. It definitely wasn't the same experience, unfortunately. I really was wondering how all of the COVID regulations were going to play into just the experience overall, and it definitely played a role. It didn't feel the same as before in terms of its kind of magical spirit, and there are a few reasons why. So I'll explain a little bit about why. First and foremost, there's just a lot of planning involved when it comes to heading to Disneyland these days. Not only do you have to reserve a ticket, which I remember when my brother and I were trying to get the tickets, we were each on our laptops, each on our phones, trying to get through the queue to even reserve a ticket. And then when you reserve a ticket, that basically is the only way that you're able to reserve an actual spot. So you have to get a ticket first. I'm sorry, I'm not explaining this very well, but you have to reserve a ticket first. Once you reserve a ticket, then you can reserve the date. And so because we wanted to be there when the Avengers Campus opened, we had very specific dates in mind. And so it was kind of a hassle planning it all and being able to reserve one without reserving the other. Also, through this queue, you were able to reserve a hotel stay at the California Adventure Hotel, which we didn't do this time around, but even that had its own queue. And so there's a lot of planning involved up front. And then in terms of the day of, there's also a lot of planning you have to do the day of, because the major rides, the most popular rides, required a reservation form. And I'll show a little screen of what I kind of mean a little bit later in this video. But the two rides that are kind of the biggest rides at Disneyland right now are the brand new Spider-Man Web Slingers ride at the Avengers Campus, and the Star Wars Land or Galaxy's Edge ride, which is Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. That's what it was. Those two are the major, most popular rides, and in order to even get on that ride, you have to have a reservation. There is no standby queue. There's no way you could walk up and try to get on the ride. You have to make a reservation, and those reservation windows open at 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. And if you don't get in right at 7 a.m., you have a next opportunity to get in at 12 p.m., but they go by fast. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, there was 4 of us that went on the trip, and that is 4 of us. So my sister, my brother, his girlfriend, 5 of us. My sister, my brother, his girlfriend, my mom, and myself. So that was 5 of us. And we all had to have our phones open at 7 a.m. to try to get in this queue to get on the ride. Somehow, luckily, one of us got in for each day that we were there. We were only there 2 days. So on the first day, we were able to go onto Web Slingers, which was the grand opening of Avengers Campus. So somehow we got in, but I remember us all trying to do it on the phone, and within the first minute, the spots were all taken up. And so we tried that on the first day, got a reservation booking number, so to speak, or booking group for Web Slingers, and then basically you wait until your group is up. And so all of this happens through the Disneyland app, and that is a must download for your Disneyland trip. Every single kind of queue to get into the ride, or a way to order food, which I'll get into as well, is all done through the app. And so you have to have the Disneyland app. But going back to the reservations, when we all tried to do it, within the minute they were all gone. But luckily one of us got in, my brother's girlfriend got in. And then the next day we were trying to get into the Star Wars ride, Rise of the Resistance. And at the 7 a.m. time slot, none of us were able to get a reservation. And so we were really bummed because it's such a major ride that we were trying to go on. So we all decided to try again at noon, and somehow one of us got on, luckily. And it kind of interrupted our day, because I remember that noon was the precise time that we were actually getting on It's a Small World, that ride. And we were literally on the boat about to go through the tunnel of the ride, which we were all scared we were gonna lose service. And so it kind of adds to the anxiety of the day, I would say. The fact that you have to keep in mind like these different queue times, and you're trying to get in, and you are almost not in the moment because there's so much pre-planning involved. Another big aspect of the pre-planning is the food. Many of the restaurants were open, but again, there wasn't always an option to walk up and order. There was mostly it was all done through an app, and you have to choose a time to pick up your food. And so the hard part with that is that we weren't able to say, oh, we're hungry, like let's go grab something now, because usually by that time, any time nearby is already taken. So there was almost like a 2-hour wait. And so we learned that the hard way on the first day, because we were starving, and we had to settle for like fruits from the little vending carts and things like that, because those are still like walk up. But in order to actually order a real meal, you always had to pre-order. And so the second day, at the very beginning of the day, we kind of all just planned our meals out, reserved the times, which restaurants we were gonna go to, and you pay for all of that up front. And then around that time, you show up and you pick up your food. But another big issue with COVID right now is that at the park, they weren't allowing you to eat and walk around. You had to grab your food and go to one of these allotted kind of eat and drink areas and sit there and have your food before walking around. And so this created a ton of chaos, I would say. Probably more than anything, all of the areas were always packed, especially during lunchtime and dinner time. At any time that like normal people want to eat, each area had very limited seating. Even though it felt like, you know, an abundance of tables, they were all full, and people had to stand by and almost wait for somebody to be done and swipe the table really quick. And you're almost competing with other people for tables. And again, I feel like that also ruins the magic of Disneyland. I think when you go to Disneyland, you almost want to escape the real world, and it's almost like this lighter, nicer, friendlier, more thoughtful, and I don't know, caring universe, you would think. But in a place where you have to compete for tables or things like that, everybody just seemed a little bit more on edge, a little bit more irritated, and that also took away from the magic, I would say. So the pre-planning was a big aspect that kind of made it a little different. Back when I went on June 4th, we still had the mask mandate here in California. So for me, it was very challenging to wear that mask the entire day. And it wasn't that hot in Orange County. It was about 75 degrees, 73 to 75 degrees. And so for me, that's usually optimal, perfect weather. But in my everyday life, I'm not used to wearing a mask all day. So I work from home. And I usually would wear a mask when I go to a grocery store or whenever I go to a public place, but that would be a very short time. And so I found that wearing a mask the entire day outside in somewhat hot weather was really, really challenging for me and made it really, really hard to breathe. In terms of the park capacity, it definitely seemed full to me. I mean, I think they were still operating at a limited capacity. And so I'm almost scared to see what it would be like once they are at full capacity, but it felt full. It felt like there was no social distancing because everybody's rubbing shoulders trying to get by. Yeah, the lines were a little social distanced, but I think a big thing with the lines to keep in mind is that due to COVID restrictions, they are trying to have the majority of the lines outside of a ride versus, a lot of rides have indoor line queues. So for example, if you've ever been on Indiana Jones, there's an outside little maze line, and then you get into the structure and you're also making the line inside. Well, due to COVID, they were trying to limit the amount of people inside even waiting for the ride. So the longer parts of lines were always outside. And so the longer time you were waiting was always outside. And it was hot, you were wearing your mask. It was pretty uncomfortable, I would say. And I would say they were a little bit shorter. The lines were a little bit shorter than usual times. I would say Space Mountain, that's the one, sorry. Space Mountain always has Space Mountain? Is it Space Mountain? I'm so sorry, guys. But it is Space Mountain. That one always has a long line just in regular times. And so that was probably the ride that took the longest. And again, it wasn't that long. I think it was maybe 40 minutes. Cars Land took a really long time, maybe like 45 minutes. And so I would say at the most we waited 45 minutes for a ride. But because the lines are outside in the sun, it felt even longer, and you are wearing a mask. So it felt like a harder wait for some reason. And so that's another thing to keep in mind. There was also a really long queue to even get into the park. And another tip that I would have for you guys is to get there early. And I mean really early. We got there around 6 a.m. and the park usually opens officially at 9 a.m., but they open the doors at 8 a.m. And there was already a long queue waiting for the entrance to even get into the ticketing area and entrance to the parks. And you'll see in the video that there's kind of like a zigzag design in where people are waiting, and that part also took a really long time to get through security check. You do get a temperature check. And so if you want to get into the park early, which I recommend if you're gonna try to get into Avengers Campus and California Adventure, then you need to get there really early, earlier than even 6 a.m. And as I mentioned, the first day that we went was a California Adventure Day and was the Avengers Campus grand opening day. And that, it was packed there. Luckily we got a reservation for the ride, which also gave us a reservation to get into the campus. But if you're standing by, you'll see in the video that there's, while I'm in California Adventure, there's a line going all through California Adventure Park. That one line was just to get into Avengers Campus. Of course, it was the grand opening. Everyone was excited. There were a ton of bloggers there. We saw a few celebrities that weekend as well. We saw Jessica Alba and Vanessa Bryant there. So it was a really popular weekend to go to Disneyland and California Adventure. But because Avengers Campus is new, I think the lines are gonna be long for a while there. And so I would recommend getting there early, going to California Adventure first, getting in that Avengers Campus line if you didn't get the reservation to get into the Web Slingers ride that would get you into the land. And so it was kind of interesting because California Adventure Park as a whole was really quiet and really empty. We got to go on rides right away. The part that was congested was Avengers Campus because that's what everybody was there for. And so you'll see that it was just packed there, and we got to try some of the new food from the new restaurant. It seemed like there actually wasn't much in the Avengers Campus. The Spider-Man ride was really cool, and so that was fun. There's the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, and that's always a good time, but that's been around for a few years too. The food was interesting, and it seemed like a big part of the Avengers Campus was the characters that are kind of dressed up as Black Panther, Marvel characters, or Spider-Man, and there were shows that were happening outside, and they were walking around, taking pictures, things like that. And so besides the new Spider-Man ride, the characters, walking around, and the new food lab, there wasn't that much that really set it apart, I would say, from any other part of the park. I was thoroughly impressed with Galaxy's Edge. That to me was really mind-blowing. It was really, really creative. The way they put together the entire area looks so realistic and futuristic, and it looks like you're in the movie. And that to me would be worth going for. If you had to choose Disneyland or California Adventure, I would go to Disneyland to experience Galaxy's Edge because it has 2 rides, it has restaurants, it has shops, it has stores, there's a number of activities, and it's just more massive in size. And so I'm happy to circle back with, those were some of my initial thoughts, but I'll circle back at the end of the video with some closing thoughts. But I hope you keep all of that in mind as you're looking through this video, and I hope that it gives you a little taste of what California Adventure and Disneyland was like during COVID.
Right, either side.
Go
in front, Arle.
You're gonna get the lead.
Well, back where we went.
Yeah, I just filled up at Fillmore's. I'm all gassed up now.
As the defenders of the throne of Wakanda, it is our sole mission to protect the king, the Black Panther himself. It is a tradition in Wakanda that exceptional women are chosen by the tribe to train as a woman. It is a great honor.
Okay, it says it's ready. I'll go get it. No, it's okay.
Was you able to put it in here?
Bitte bleiben Sie im Mondsitz.
Well, I hope that video gave you a little escape in your day and you're able to step into the magical world of California Adventure and Disneyland for a moment and give you a taste of what the experience was like during COVID. As I mentioned before, it was definitely a different experience for me than years past, but I still had a good time. I was still happy to be with my family. I got to try some amazing food that I hadn't tried before, The mint juleps, I thoroughly recommend. The beignets were really good. There was a new Dole Whip with tahine that I really loved. And, you know, I think Disneyland will always kind of have that nostalgic feeling for me because it was such a big part of my childhood. But I would also say that if you're wondering whether you should, you know, go as restrictions are still kind of in order, or if you should wait, I would recommend waiting if you want the full Disney experience. I would say there was also something I didn't mention at the beginning of this clip is that there weren't some special elements to the park that usually are there due to COVID. So there wasn't the Fantasmic show at night. There wasn't the World of Color at night. Fireworks were not going at night. And I believe that I read that the fireworks will be coming back soon. Also an update is that California has lifted their mask mandate if you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated. So at Disneyland, you don't even have to wear your mask if you're fully vaccinated. And so that's an update from when I attended. So things are looking up and getting better, but definitely know what you're getting yourself into. There are definitely still things that are going to be different. And I almost think that perhaps they're going to be different for the long term now that, you know, everyone is more digitally savvy and everything is on the app. I just was saddened to feel that you weren't fully immersed in the environment if you were constantly like having to look at your phone to plan things. Unfortunately, that's the only thing that I wish was a little better. But, you know, if you have any questions, if there's anything I could answer or clarify for you, please go ahead and leave a comment, ask a question. I'm so happy to help. And I'm excited. I'm excited that the world is transitioning slowly but surely. Definitely in California, we feel like we're starting to open up and life is returning a little bit to normal. And if we can do these little things and like have these little experiences that make us feel, you know, happy and joyous and remind us of what life was like pre-COVID, then I consider that a win. And so it was just nice to be able to go somewhere, experience something, be with my family. And I'm just so encouraged by the world opening up and looking forward to more and more trips. And I'm glad everybody is, you know, doing it safely. And so I hope this was helpful to you. Let me know if I could be any more help, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.